Rent to rent step by step. Hey, it's Chris here from Property Abundance, and in this video we are going to dive into a step-by-step guide for how you can do more rent-to-rent deals. Exactly what's involved in each step so that you can follow step by step all the way to creating success and additional income for yourself from property. So first off, let's start with the question, well, what is rent-to-rent? Okay, now rent-to-rent is an acquisition strategy. It's a way of getting properties that you can then use for whatever purposes you want. Now, if we were to look at the really traditional form of rent-to-rent, this is simply where you rent a property from someone, and let's say, for example, you pay £1,000 a month, and then you rent it out to someone else and you charge them £1,100 a month and you make £100 markup in the process. Not really much value added, haven't really added much to the equation, and therefore the margins are super slim. Now, there's a massive problem with this strategy of rent-to-rent, although there are people out there doing it. The big problem here is that you just need 1 month void. If you take 1 month to find a tenant for yourself, then you have destroyed the next 10 months of your profit. Because every month that it's full, you only make £100 profit, and every month that it's empty, you lose £1,000. So you are down by £1,000 with just 1 month of void, and you're going to spend the next 10 months recouping those losses. Now, that's just one example. Take, for example, let's say if the boiler went and you weren't covered. Then again, you've got to install a new boiler, and that's wiped out your profits for the next 12 to 24 months. So here we need to find a way to increase the profit margins on these sort of deals for this to be a viable strategy. Now, there's some really good news, and that is that there is a simple way to increase the yield of these deals, and it's simply by combining the acquisition strategy of rent to rent with an application strategy of either serviced accommodation or HMOs. Now, we'll dive into those in separate videos, so if you haven't already done so, please drop a like on this video. It really does help the channel. Please drop a comment as we go through, and make sure you subscribe to get these up-to-date, bit-by-bit, step-by-step tutorials on how you can run your property business straight out of my own property business as well. So, how do we do this? Well, look, the step-by-step guide is, first things first, we need to find our area. Okay, we need to identify the area that's going to be the right area for us to start acquiring properties. Now, what makes a good area depends on whether you're acquiring a property to use as an HMO or if you're acquiring a property to use as a serviced apartment. Now, if you're looking for an HMO and an area to invest in for HMOs, you want to have a lower value demographic, i.e. people in worse paid jobs, things like warehousing, things like manufacturing, things like retail, hospitality. So you want lots of these kind of jobs to exist in a city to create demand for cheaper accommodation. Because if they don't earn as much, they won't want to spend as much on accommodation, so they want a cheaper version of it, and therefore that can create a lot of HMO demand. On the flip side, if you want to run serviced apartments, you need a lot of transient demand. Now, this means people who are going to come to an area, do something, either a tourist activity, visit friends, visit relatives, go to a hospital either for work or to stay, universities, building projects, things that bring people to an area for them to do something and then they go home again. So it's a transient demand. They come and then they go. And that creates demand for what we call short-let properties. So we want an area of strong demand. Now we want obviously that type of demand being whichever application strategy we're going to use. So strong demand. Now once we've found an area of strong demand, we need to get to know the numbers of these areas. Now by that, what I mean is, firstly, how much is it going to cost you to acquire properties in the first place? So you need to get to know the numbers in that town. Now, it's important as well that you look at different areas within the same town, because places very close to one another, the price for a certain type of property will vary massively. So get to know your acquisition figures. How much can you expect to pay for a 1-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat, 3-bedroom house, 4-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house? And also get to know your sales numbers. So if you're going to rent out rooms in an HMO, how much can you rent out rooms in an HMO for? What about if it's a standard double? What about if it's a large double? What about if it's a double with an ensuite? Well, what about a single room? So we've got to understand these numbers before we start signing ourselves up for properties, because this is how we can pick the best areas and the best houses within those areas to maximize our profits. Okay, we want to minimize our upfront acquisition cost and maximize our sales price. That's how we create the margin. So we've got to know the numbers in these areas from both a sales and an acquisitions perspective. The third thing we've got to do, once we understand the numbers and we've found the right area to invest, is we've got to start sourcing. Now, to source rent-to-rent deals, I actually teach 9 ways to source rent-to-rent deals to my clients. One of my favorites is going to be agents. I mean, agents are just a great source of consistent deals. Now, typically an agent can bring you a deal every couple of months. Okay, if you get really in with an agent, you'll typically get a deal every couple of months. So if you want to be able to do a deal every 2 weeks, then you need 4 agents on board. If you want to be able to do a deal every month, you only need 2 agents on board. Hey, if you're happy with doing a deal every 2 months, just 1 agent will be enough for that. So agents is one of my favorites. We also combine this with strategies like Open Rent or Gumtree. Now, if you don't know what they are, these are listing sites, Open Rent and Gumtree. These are listing sites where private landlords tend to advertise their own properties themselves. Rather than employing agents to do it for them, they advertise themselves. So by finding these listings and contacting these landlords, that gives us an opportunity to speak directly to the owner of the property. Now, whether we're speaking to the agent or the owner will dictate how we approach doing the deal, because an agent's priorities are very different to the priorities of an owner. Okay, an agent cares about how many deals they're going to do, finding the right deal for the client, or the right tenant for the client, and how much commission they're going to earn. An owner cares about, are you going to pay your rent on time? How much rent will you pay? Are you going to look after the house? So we need to change our messaging depending on who we're talking to. So we start our sourcing process, choose the strategy that we're going to use the best, the one that we like the most for sourcing. Agents, Open Rent, Gumtree. I'm also going to put on here, because no one's doing it, is paid ads. Now again, paid ads is a very underutilized area when it comes to sourcing property deals. Nobody likes to spend money. And therefore, people give up these massive opportunities because they're not prepared to put a few quid down for some paid ads. One of the best sourcing strategies I personally use in my own property business is paid ads and agents. These are my 2 favorite ways to source my deals. Now, once we've got some leads coming through, once we've got agents bringing us opportunities, once we've got landlords on board through our online direct messaging campaigns, and once we've got leads coming through for our paid ads, we need to start negotiating on these. Okay, so negotiation. So whether you get the deal from an agent, from Open Rent, Gumtree, or from paid ads, you're going to go on and want to visit that house. Okay, so we need to conduct a viewing. Now this is a really important step, because on the viewing, that's basically when you'll get an idea of, well, how good a condition is the property in? What works do I need to do? What comes with the property, and therefore what do I need to provide? And that will help you calculate your upfront investment required, which again, we need to factor into our numbers. It's super important that we figure out how much we've got to put into a deal to work out the return on investment, which is the single most important metric to measure when we are calculating which deals we should invest our money into. So we've got to have this negotiation. Now, the kind of things we're going to want to negotiate with the owner is, firstly, the right and their permission for us to do what we want with the property, either converting it into an HMO or running it as a serviced apartment. Now, to get that permission, we've got to think, well, how can we offer a benefit to them that means that they can give us this permission without and still appeal as an attractive tenant compared to anybody else? So again, we need to think about what their priorities are and how we can appeal to those priorities. Okay, so for an owner, it could be things like longer term contracts, so less chopping and changing, less needing to find tenants. You could offer to throw in minor maintenance, so dealing with, like, if a toilet gets blocked, you'll get your guys to sort it. If a shower stops working, you'll take care of it. And only major maintenance issues get reported back to the landlord, like a broken boiler, for example. So these extra little benefits that we can throw in for the owners are really, really good, and we can trade those for these permissions to do what we want. Or another way to put it would be, we're providing enough value to that person for them to go, hey, do you know what? Fine, do what you want with the house. This is a great deal for me. So we need to negotiate on these things. Now, other things that we need to agree with these people are the rental price that we're going to be paying, any inflationary clauses in that, because again, remember, we're going for longer term contracts here. I typically, when negotiating rent-to-rent deals, ask for a minimum of 3 years. Now, I will do shorter if it's a really good return on investment and they just want it for a shorter period for whatever reason. Maybe they have never worked with me before and don't feel comfortable. Maybe they need to sell the house in a couple of years and they don't want to do a 5-year commitment. So I will go shorter if I have to, but we need to agree the sales or rental price, the duration of the contract, any inflationary clauses that happen after year 1, year 2, whether there's a deposit and how much it is, what you're allowed to use the house for, if there's going to be any furniture included, whether they are going to give it a lick of paint or redo any of the flooring or walls, etc., before you take over the house. So once we've got agreement on our negotiation, our fifth step is to get that down into the form of a contract. Now, when it comes to contracts for rent-to-rent agreements, we cannot use a standard rental contract that you would use as a private individual when renting a property from someone. Okay, you have to use a company let agreement. And there's a big reason for this. An AST, an assured short hold tenancy, which is the document a standard person would use to rent a property from another person, is not a legally enforceable document for a company to enter into. Okay, it would be the same as a dog trying to enter into that contract. It's just not enforceable. It's designed for people. So because of the Landlord and Tenant Act, because of the Housing Act and their influence over an AST, a company can't enter into an AST, and therefore we have to use a company let agreement, or also known as a common law tenancy agreement. Okay, very interchangeable terms. So we get the right contract. Now, once we've got our contract set up, that's when we go into our property setup. Now, again, how we're going to set up our property depends on the strategy that we're using. Now, if we're using serviced accommodation, we need to set that property up as if it's like a hotel room. Okay, it needs to have fresh sheets in there, everything in there for people to use. The kitchen needs to be fully equipped. The sofa has to be nicely dressed with scatter cushions, a nice TV on the wall, a TV package. In the bedrooms, you need to have the beds fully dressed with fresh, crisply pressed linen, fresh towels, toiletries for people to use. All the stuff that you would expect to be in a hotel room when you walked in there to stay needs to be in your serviced apartment or serviced house. Okay, now when you're setting it up, also think about who you're setting it up for. Okay, if you're setting it up for contractors and a cheaper end of the market, then you won't want to be putting in premium £2,000 sofas, for example. Okay, you'll want to set it up with your end client in mind. So if you're going for the business travelers, focus on great Wi-Fi, great workspaces, comfortable beds, and nice kind of well-lit and higher end like standard of accommodation. If you're going for the family market, make sure you're catering to that family market with high chairs, baby cots, changing facilities, these kind of things. So that's for the SA side of things. Now on the HMO side, we need to think, who is our tenant? Now, when we're setting up the property, if we're going for, let's say, the working professional model, okay, so somebody who's in work and is staying in an accommodation like an HMO because they want to save money. Now, again, when you provide a room to an HMO, there isn't this expectation that all the stuff's going to be in there, like bedding and pillows and all these kind of things. Now, you can offer that for sure as an extra service, but the expectation is that the rooms come furnished and the kitchen comes fully equipped, so that they can walk in without having to buy all their own pots and pans and plates and stuff, and they can use stuff in the kitchen, but in their room, they get just the furniture. Maybe some pictures on the walls, maybe some fragrance diffusers, but not to the same standard like an SA where everything's fresh and ready for them. So we need to set that up, ready for our clients. And once we've got it set up, it's really important then that we actually do the next step, which is marketing. Now, the first step in being able to market your properties effectively is to have amazing photographs. Okay, I can't stress this enough. You have to have professional photos of your properties. Otherwise, every time somebody views it online, it's not going to do itself justice. Okay, just make sure you get professional photos. And again, I see this time and time again when I'm looking at people, because we provide mentorship services as well. When somebody comes and says, well, why is my Airbnb not performing? The first thing I do is, right, show me your listing. And 99% of the time, a failing listing is because either they haven't understood the market or they've tried to cheap it on this step here. And they haven't invested into their own property, they haven't set it up right, and they haven't got the professional photos done. And so they've gone around with their camera phone, they've gone click, 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 click on a couple of rooms, and then they've just stuck it on Airbnb and crossed their fingers and hope they'll get some bookings. Okay, now we can do that, or we can do it the professional way where we actually make a load of money. So, step one, get professional photos. Then if you're going to start renting out your HMO rooms, we need to think about how we're going to market those. Now, the single biggest source of tenants for HMOs will come from Spare Room and Open Rent. Okay, these are the two biggest tenant source websites for individual private rooms in the UK. So you want to make sure that first things first, you get onto those. Now, after you've got onto the two biggest in the country, you need to then look at, are there any local, kind of more bespoke ones? So what I like to do here is whenever we're looking at a client's area, we'll just go and type in, as if we were a tenant trying to find a room ourselves, we'll go onto Google, type the name of the city, and then rent a room. And we'll see who ranks the highest on Google. Now, look, Spare Room's always going to be there. Rightmove's always going to be there. OpenRent's always going to be there. But then you'll get these smaller, city-specific rental sites that aren't on a national scale, but are relevant to your city and rank highly because they're relevant to that city. So once we've got onto our big ones, then we get our listings up on these smaller, more geographically specific ones as well. So that is our online strategy. Listings. Okay, so that's for our online listings. Now beyond that, there's so much more you could do. In fact, I could do an entire video just on how to market HMO rooms and just on how to market SAs. In fact, I tell you what, if you want to see that, if you want to see a video on just how to market your HMO rooms and get more tenants, or how to market your service departments to get more bookings, drop a comment down below, let me know that you want to see that so I can prioritize which videos I make in which order. But look, your biggest one's going to be your online listings. Beyond that, you want to think about referrals for existing tenants. You want to think about flyers in local establishments. You want to think about partnerships with agents. I mean, there's just so much you can do. Like paid adverts, again, a really underutilized one. So yeah, I mean, look, I could deep dive that and do an entire hour-long video on this. So there's some top tips. There's the best ones to go for and in which order. But if you want to see that deep dive, let me know in the comments. Okay, so that's for our HMOs. Now, if we're talking about the service departments, firstly, we need to be on the online listings again. Now, the online listing sites for service departments are very different from the HMO ones. Here, we need to be on sites like Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, TripAdvisor, Expedia, all these really big travel sites. Now, why would you do it? Because they are the travel supermarkets, okay? They're the supermarkets of the travel world. So in the same way that if you were launching a packet of crisps, you'd want to be on the supermarket shelves, right? So if you want to be on the supermarket shelves to sell crisps, you need to be on the travel supermarket shelves to sell travel products, i.e. accommodation. So we're going to get onto the online listings first of all. Again, photos will be super important here, and understanding your numbers so that you can fit into the market, again, with the right pricing, is going to be really important as well. Beyond that, what else can you do? Well, you can look for where your people travel. So if you haven't already done so, if you've got service departments, go onto specific sites like tradestays.co.uk, which is the biggest travel company specialising in contractors here in the UK. You can go on to sites like Silverdoor, which are the biggest corporate booking specialists. Okay, and start to look for specialists in certain niches depending on which one you want to target, and increase the number of online listings using both the broad ones like Airbnb where everyone books, and then the niche ones where they focus on a specific sector. So if that's your target market, get onto those. Beyond that, we can do stuff like making sure that we've got our website set up so that we can direct traffic there with paid advertising. We want to set up some hard copy advertising that we can start leafleting. You want to start talking to local businesses about who travels to visit them. Do they have customers come over? Do they have suppliers come over? Do they have a sales team that comes around once a month? And where do they put those people up when they come to town? And start to try and form those partnerships. You can also look at your local tourist board, and if they can give you any advice on how you can get listed on their tourist sites. So that, again, there's literally tons of things that you can do to market your SAs better. And if you want to see that video, drop a comment down below. Let me know that that's what you want to see. Okay, so we spoke about our marketing. Then we need to get our operations set up. Now, the biggest thing I can say here is, well, first, I mean, again, there's tons we can talk about here, but make sure that the first team that you hire, whether it's service departments or an HMO, is a good cleaner. Okay, because they can do so much more than just cleaning for you. Okay, so our cleaners in our HMO businesses, they do the cleaning of the communal areas, they test the smoke alarms, they check our inventory in the kitchen to make sure there's enough pots and pans, they look out for maintenance issues and report them via our app, they make sure there's no drug use in the house, they kind of check that tenant behaviour is correct and that people are following the house rules. They make sure that the signage on our notice boards is all up to date and correct. And they clean. So they do loads more than just the cleaning. They also set up our rooms for us. So if somebody moves out, we want to dress our room to make it look nice, so when we go and do a viewing, it looks really nice. Now I could go to that house, but then I've got to travel 20 minutes there, set the room up, 20 minutes back. It's probably taking me a good couple of hours. Or if the cleaner's going there anyway, well great, they can just pop into that room, dress it up, it'll take them an extra 15 minutes. So it's a much more efficient way of doing things. If they're already traveling to the property, we want to make the most of the fact that they're already going to be there and think what else could they help us with so that you don't have to physically go there and waste your time. So number one is cleaners. So cleaners. Okay, now beyond cleaners, we want to think about our check-in process and making sure that your tenants understand the house rules, that they understand what the expectations are, when the rent's got to be paid, how much is got to be paid, on which day, by how, like bank transfer or card. If it's your serviced accommodation business, payment is easy because that's all before they stay. So we've got our cleaners, we've spoken about payment. We also need to think about check-ins. Now again, for HMOs, it's a little bit easier because there's less frequent. Okay, once people have taken a tenancy, typically they're staying 6 months. But we still want to have that tenant check-in process so that we can make sure that we've complied with all the regulations associated with renting rooms and renting properties to people. But with serviced apartments, it's actually a lot more important because there are so many more check-ins. Okay, so we need to have a really smooth check-in process. Now that means that you've got to get the keys to somebody and get them into the property, have them find the property, find the key for it and let themselves in without you going there ideally. Because again, as soon as you have to go to that property, you're going to put a cap on the amount of which you can grow your business. So we want to do as much of this remotely as possible. So for HMOs, we have lockboxes outside the property where the room keys are stored in the lockbox. When somebody leaves and moves out of a house, they return the key to the lockbox. When somebody's moving into the house, the key is waiting for them there in the lockbox. Equally with our serviced apartments, we do exactly the same if we can put a lockbox. However, if it's a block of flats or a flat in a block of flats, then we can't necessarily go drilling into the side of a block of flats, especially if it's made of glass. Because the owners of that flat block might have a thing or two to say about that, right? So in that instance, that's where we use something called a key nest solution. Now this is where we can give our tenants, or our guests rather, a single use code. They can take that to the shop, they can give it to the shop owner then gives them the keys, they check in, they have their stay, and when they leave, they drop the keys back to the shop. And it's a simple service and it's really secure as well because it's a single use code, they can't use it multiple times. So we've got our check-ins, got our cleaners. Now we also need to think about how we can manage our clients when they're in the property as well. So we'll call this client management. Now this applies equally for HMOs and serviced apartments. We need to have codes of conduct. The last thing you want in a scaling property business when you're trying to grow your business is to have neighbours moaning about you to the council. So we need to make sure that people who are going to live in our houses abide by the code of conduct for that house. That means that they're not just throwing their rubbish out on the street. It means that they're not having parties until 2 in the morning. So we need to have really clear guidelines with our clients and make sure we enforce them to make sure that people live harmoniously with one another. The last thing you want to do is upset your neighbours. Now, if you get these 8 steps right, number 9 is we need to aim to make at least £1,000 per month on average per property deal that we do. Okay, so the average returns from a rent-to-rent deal will be about £1,000 a month. Now look, sometimes you'll do smaller deals, okay, you've got where the earnings are a bit less. What I would personally advise is don't do a deal if it's going to make you less than £500 a month, because the amount of work you have to do, you just got to value your time. Okay, now obviously a lot of that time's in the setup. Once it's actually set up, there's not too much to do other than make sure the operations run smoothly, but I'll show you in another video how outsourceable a lot of that is. But it's got to be worth you investing the time and money setting these deals up. So 2 guide rules for you: don't do a deal if it's less than £500 a month. And number 2, don't do a rent-to-rent deal if it makes you less than 100% return on investment. Okay, that's my golden rule for rent-to-rents. I don't do a rent-to-rent deal if I'm not going to make at least 100% return on my investment. That means any money that I put in, I get that all back within the first year. So if I have to invest 5k, I need to be making at least 5k back in the first year so that year 2 and 3, I'm making full profit. But that's an absolute minimum. Okay, most deals that we do are over 200%. So again, it's a fantastic investment strategy to make sure that you're maximizing the amount of money or the amount of return you make on your money every single month. So if you do this, you'll get results like Carl and Michelle, okay, two of our clients who are absolutely crushing it in rent to rent right now, based in Stanford. Now they've just done their 5th rent to rent serviced accommodation deal. Each of these deals, the combined total, they're making about $4,500 just from 5 deals. They literally launched them last month. So amazing work, guys. All they've done is follow this step-by-step process here with all the extra details that go with it, of course, as well. So if you want to find out what those are, if you want to find out how we can help you a little bit more as well, or if you just want a step-by-step plan for yourself, check the link down below in the description where we've got a link where you can book a free, no obligation, 30-minute call with one of my team. And on that call, we'll get to grips with where you are right now, what you're looking to achieve and what resources you have available for your business and where you want to get to. And we'll just give you your next steps to get you closer to that goal as well. So click on the link down below if you want to get that. Otherwise, if you've enjoyed this video, please do me a massive favor. Please click that like button. Please leave a comment. Share it with your friends that you think would be interested in this rent-to-rent strategy as well. And please make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with the latest property tips straight out of my own property business as well. Other than that, guys, have a great day and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.